Hello, my name's Catherine Holland. I'm Catherine Holland of www.catherineholland.co.uk, inspiring author and breath coach. I work with a technique that's called Rebirthing Breathwork. Its proper name is conscious connected breathing. And today I'm going to introduce you to some of the issues that people have come to me with. It's the first time I've done this, I've not done this before. And so I'm going to talk you through a few of the conditions or circumstances or the types of issues that people have had to deal with who've chosen to come and work with me. First of all, I shall introduce myself in case you haven't seen my work before. And then I will, tell you a little bit how I got into breathwork myself, and also the implications this had in my life, because it's been a profound influence in my work, but also in my survival and why I'm here today, I believe, which is quite exciting. And then I will talk about the specific reasons that people have come to me. And then I will talk a little bit how you can work with me. I'm in the middle of creating a new program, which you might be interested in. It's going to be in webinar format. It's going to be 3 webinars, introducing breathwork, and then the various content that makes up breathwork teaching. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out. Go to my Facebook page, that's where I tend to put everything, which is Catherine Holland Indestructible Soul. And there you'll be able to see the information as it comes along as to how you can take a first step in working with me. It's going to be a group program, and a low-cost group program, just so that people can put their toe in the water and give it a try. So let me know if there's anything specific you'd like covered, and there will be opportunities to ask questions and to ask me specific things that you're interested in, which always makes the program more interesting for both you, the viewer, and for me doing the presentation. So that will be really nice. So let me just tell you a little bit about how I got into breathwork and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. As a young woman, I went to university and I studied human psychology. And although I was very interested in the subject, I found that the teaching about it was sorely lacking. And I suppose because I'd gone in with hopes of really being able to work on the fundamental underlying issues for people, I was so disappointed to find that actually this is not something that's ever attempted. The conclusion I came to is that Western medicine doesn't ever view the whole person. It only views either the head in some sort of word beginning with psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry, or below here, bodily issues, which are treated very much like a broken down car. And my dream was to be able to provide for people a service which really linked these things and that connected our past with our present and our future, that connected our body and our psyche and indeed our soul. And that was my dream. And I didn't find it by studying at university, but I did find it when I realised I needed to sort out my own life, surprise, surprise, and that I started looking for something to help me. And I knew that it wasn't going to be standard psychotherapy or that sort of thing. And somebody that I met, a fellow parent that I met, told me about breathwork. And I was having problems in my relationship at the time. And I was really afraid of leaving the relationship and living on my own, which is interesting considering how far I've come. It's 25 years ago now. And I'm not afraid of that at all. Not a bit anymore. But it was profound. It was really useful. It did everything that it professed to do. To my delight and wonderment, I was really happy to make my own way in the world and to be satisfied and happy and to feel safe, which is wonderful. And sadly, something that still a lot of people don't feel today. So I trained then in breathwork myself, thinking this is actually going to be my profession rather than doing a degree in psychology and then going into something like psychotherapy, which had been my plan. And then fast forward 15 years and I got hit by a car. And my breathwork practice was an integral part of my life by then. And I believe that it saved my life because while I was bleeding very heavily in the road, I continued to connect to my breathing. Although for a little while, I did leave my body, and I'm not sure what happened to my breathing at that time. I guess it probably stopped at that time, but I don't know that. However, once I decided I wasn't going to die and I was actually going to come back into this body filled with pain and losing blood rapidly, I maintained my connected breathing, circular breathing. That way might be better on the camera. And I connected my breathing and I just continued to do so. There were a lot of horrendous things that happened. Apart from the injury I had lots of surgery. Thank goodness the emergency services were really quick to the scene. The police were out on their rounds. It was 10:30 at night on a Thursday night, I think, pub kicking out time. And my breathwork, as well as the other features of my lifestyle, my chosen lifestyle was very clean, meant that I survived not only the accident and losing half my blood, but also the ensuing operations and skin grafts and all that delay that went on. I had an external fixator in my leg for 5 months. It was very difficult. It was not a good time. But having made that decision in the road that I was going to live, I was just going forward like a steam engine. I suppose a bit like a road roller, you know, that sort of squashing everything in its path. That's how I felt. And so, although I got distracted for the last 14 years treating injuries, which I then trained to do, I am now fully back into the breathwork and the lifestyle creation. And the reason that's come about is because I started writing about it. I finally got to a place where I was ready to write about the accident, the reason I survived, my experience, and my realization that my lifestyle was what saved my life. And it's what makes me super fit and super healthy. And there are various components to that, which I've written a little guide called Indestructible Health, which you can download free if you would like to. And from that, I realised that the fundamental things that make us healthy are our breathing, drinking water, eating a high proportion of raw food, whole foods, unprocessed foods, which is quite well known now, but also our emotional care, our happiness, satisfaction in what we're doing day to day in our lives. A whole load of decisions that I had made that meant that I not only survived, but that I recovered really quickly, really well, and really completely. So much so that this leg that was broken in so many ways, that there was a piece of bone in my shin missing, about this much. Both my shin bones were broken. The tibia had this gap in it, and my fibula had been broken in several places. I lost all the muscles and skin off that leg too. So there was a lot of repairing the surgeons did with it. And they didn't expect a very successful repair for various reasons, which in their practice they knew were danger zones. So whether the bone would survive, whether the skin grafts would take, whether there would be so much infection and lack of blood flow that I would have to have my leg removed, which was one of the possibilities. So it's really interesting that having made that decision and keeping my oxygen and correct balance in my blood, which is what I made it my business to do, including having food brought into the hospital and taking what I call supportive medicines, which are either nutritionally helpful, I was taking vitamin C at the time, or they are medicines, for example, homeopathy, which doesn't damage the body in any way, it only supports the body's healing, which is more than can be said for a lot of Western medicines. So I didn't have to feel that I was losing anything to gain anything, although I was given a lot of antibiotics, which is a problem because I'm allergic to them, and they caused me quite a lot of problems. But I managed to survive all of that. So that's my reason for really bringing breathwork to the fore now in my life and in my work. And then I would like to talk about the type of things that people come with, because it's really interesting to see how fundamental the oxygen, carbon dioxide, the gaseous balance in our breathing and therefore in our blood flow to all the cells in the body, how fundamental this is. And it was partly because of my training, my experience, but a lot of it did come about from this accident and from realizing just what makes us healthy. You may have seen, if you're interested in this sort of thing and if you're of an inquiring mind, you may have seen the type of work that's being done for many of the chronic diseases, for many of the serious diseases, diabetes, heart disease, all of these areas, and the body balancing areas like cancer, for example. All of these are having lots of work done in many different areas. And I'm not talking about cures, I'm talking about the understanding that we now have that our lifestyle is the foundation upon which our bodies can operate. And it's a very different model from that which sees something going wrong in a body as a faulty part that can be replaced. And I'm imagining that if you're watching this, that you may already have looked into some of those things. But it's certainly an area that is coming to the fore in interest, where in this country, I'm in England, I'm in the West Midlands in England, and certainly the type of whole body holistic medicines have not been a big part of the culturally accepted normal way to practice here. So it's quite interesting to see that this is changing. I'm not quite sure where this light across the screen is coming from. Or maybe it's the sun coming round. Okay, I'll move around a bit. So it's very interesting for me to see this and to work with this. And of course, the type of things that people come to me with. And it varies enormously from a physical ailment, for example, asthma, to a place in their life they would like to be. For example, somebody who is very self-aware, perhaps a yoga teacher, who has a busy practice, they have high self-esteem, they have dealt with and come to terms with a lot of their past, and they're really happy with their life and what they're building in their life and their relationships. And what they would like to do by coming to me and using breathwork is to make a really familiar connection with their spirit, with their soul, and to be on day-to-day terms with how that affects them in their growth as a whole person, not only in this lifetime, not only in the three-dimensional physical dimension that we're used to operating in, but to explore and expand outside that, which is also really interesting, really juicy place to be. And then, just wondering whether I need to get out of the sun again. It's coming right around to ground here. Beautiful, beautiful day. And then people come to me, and this is particularly the case where they have something they wish to come to terms with. So, for example, a near drowning incident, or being in a war zone, or being attacked, sexual assault, these types of things that people turn over and over and over in their minds and in their memories, and they really wish to be able to let go of and to come to peace with. I'm just moving my table here because as the sun comes around, I'm not able to keep it off the screen, and it's changing how the picture looks, isn't it? Okay. So I would like to talk about a young woman who came to me having had an experience with a young man where she was unable to keep her boundaries. And she ended up with a number of experiences that were far more intimate than she wanted them to be. And she regretted it. She regretted it, partly because she felt that she had had an opportunity to make some different decisions, and that she'd not done that in a strong enough way to feel that she'd been true to herself. And this was something that we worked on. She came to me for breathwork sessions over a number of weeks, perhaps even months. I'm trying to think now. It was probably a series of 10 sessions over about 10 weeks. People generally come once a week, especially if they've got an issue that they're really wishing to work through. And it was really lovely. And I had a card from her later saying that what had really brought her joy was that the experience was still in her life. It was still important. It had still been something that she regretted and that she perhaps wished she'd done something else about. But she didn't suffer in her day-to-day present from it anymore. It was now something in her past which did not keep invading her present. And that's what breathwork is particularly good for, in my experience. The physical manifestations of issues in the body, I had asthma when I went for rebirthing. I went to my rebirther with my emotional issues, with my fear of living alone, and after, how long would it have been? It was certainly a number of sessions, probably about 8, I would imagine. And I remember I went out on my bicycle, which I do every day. It's my mode of transport and I love it. And to my utter astonishment, I was able to cycle up a hill on a really cold, frosty day without any catch in my lungs or in my breath at all. And it was the first time ever in my life I remember being able to do that. And then it fell into place and I realised I didn't have an asthmatic reaction anymore. It had gone. I didn't have an announcement at the time that it went because I was just aware that it hadn't happened when it used to happen. The thing I was aware of was what they call a breath release, which may be related, where the muscles in the sides of my chest released, and they'd been tight for a long time. Just reaching around now to find my screen wipe so that I can see myself with all the sun and the dust on the screen. Yeah, so it was a real wonderful experience of letting go of the tension in my chest, which had been there for a long time. And I'd had an operation when I was 4, and they'd cut around my chest. And unbeknownst to me, I'd been holding a part of my breath ever since then, because it had hurt to breathe at the time. And I think everybody assumed that I was breathing fully after the operation, when in fact I had never become fully breathing again. So to have this happen suddenly in one session was really magical. And it's quite common. According to my rebirth, she said that this breath release is quite common. So many of us have physical things that have made us hold our chests tight. They can be a physical thing reacting to an emotional circumstance, or they can be a physical thing like mine was, which was a scar, which had lots of stitches and was painful to breathe in and out properly. But there's some of the physical things that people might find. And then there are systemic things. There's been quite a lot of research done now, which is wonderful to be able to refer to. And if you do a search, you'll find particularly the Touch Institute in Florida, but also in Russia, they're doing some breathing studies where they have, quite understandably, discovered that by doing the circular breathing, you are oxygenating the body in such a way that it can heal really quickly and it can heal really fully. And it might perhaps interest you to know that we only breathe about 50% of the time as Westerners. I'm sure I breathe more than that now because I've really learned to, but that's one of the reasons why we suffer so much, is because when we have a challenging birth circumstance, which pretty much all Western babies do because the cord gets cut, we breathe under a stressful in a stressful period because we have suddenly had our oxygen supply cut off. So we then breathe in a panicky way, and that's our first experience of the world and of change and of breathing. And so that's really common to have this tight chest. And now I'm just trying to think of some of the other circumstances that people have come with. Things that have haunted them, things that have been very difficult in the past. Yeah, I've already given you an example of that, haven't I? So I'm just going to have a little think now and see if there's anything else I can come up with. Oh yeah, this is something that comes up quite a lot. I have been blessed and really, really appreciate. I have had 50% men and 50% women to work with, and that's given me the most wonderful window into what it's like to be a man. When you're working with somebody on their breath and one-to-one, you hear about how it feels to live their life. And that's been truly eye-opening, and I really, really feel so privileged to have experienced this. And I'm thinking now of one case in particular, but it's not that unusual, where a man has been, in his words, humiliated as a child. And it seems to me, and I've had 2 daughters and a son, in that order, it seems to me that living in Britain, and I think it's true in America, I think it's probably true in Europe too, that boy children are treated differently. They're treated less sympathetically. They are given far less emotional security in the world to begin at the beginning of their life, and then they're expected to be able to carry a lot more. And that seems really unfair, thinking about it from that perspective. So you have half the population as infants who are given a lot of security, held a lot, carried a lot, and then they are expected to be looked after as adults by the other half of the adults, who are given less care and attention, but are expected to look after the ones who are given more. Doesn't make sense to me, but there we are. And it was very much reflected in bringing up my son and seeing how the general population behaved towards him. He was, as were my daughters, very big for his age, but he was particularly. And so as a youngster of about 2.5, he looked about 4, and he was treated really quite roughly, sometimes physically roughly, by people who dealt with him. Astonishingly so, sometimes by strangers in the street. It was very odd. And I don't know if that was odd because I'd had daughters before, or because I was more aware, or just because I watched for things like this. But certainly it gave me such an eye-opener into how men have a really difficult beginning, and then in the way that the genders are treated so differently, nobody really understands how difficult it is for them. So to have men coming to me sharing this sort of thing and explaining how their family members, both genders, treat a young boy in a way which makes it very difficult for him to feel secure, and deliberately trick and make fun of in a way that just seems so very unkind, I can see how isolating that is. I can see how difficult it makes it to ask for help. I can see how hard it is to be able to be soft and vulnerable and open when you need to. So yeah, that's been something that's been such a wonderful and amazing thing to be able to do and to be with somebody who can then grow into the fullness of themselves and to be heard and to learn to feel, to really properly feel, and then find ways to express how they feel in a way that still fits in with some areas of their life where they wish to be discreet, but also to find places in their life where they can learn how to express it with openness. And that's so joyful. It's so lovely. So in general, what I'm doing with people is enabling and encouraging them to be fully themselves. And the way that breathwork helps with this is that it enables us to relate to all parts of our body and our psyche, and to open the doors and the gates within to them all. And it's interesting how many of them are shut once you start opening them. And that's certainly been true of me too. I remember realizing that I didn't cry. I really didn't want to cry, and I certainly didn't want to see people to see me doing so. And then once I'd learned to do that, I realized that I didn't laugh either. I didn't laugh in public, things I found funny, especially if I wasn't sure that other people did. So, quite a few doors, blockages going on there. And really liberating to be able to open those up. And now that I've been able to do all of that and worked with people, it's created a bigger and bigger and bigger space for me to create safety for working with other people. And that's been really interesting from the perspective of my accident, where I've begun to attract some people who aren't certain that they actually want to be alive in this lifetime. So that's been an area where I've been able to provide safety so that people can explore things that they can't talk to other people about. And it's really brought me fully into the present and the acceptability of things that perhaps might be unacceptable to people. So that gives me a really lovely holding space for people to explore what they need to explore. And it's fab, and I really enjoy it. So that's telling you a little bit about some of the things I work with, some of the ways, obviously being a little bit discreet about particular instances, because I don't want to make anything that's identifiable for people, of course. Confidentiality is, of course, something that's paramount to me. And you would expect it to be so, I know. So, does anybody have any questions for me? Let's have a little look. Doesn't appear so at the moment. Please feel free to write in the group chat box if you would like to. And I'll do my best to notice anything that's there and to answer it. Okay, so just looking through my notes now. Yeah, ultimately what I'm endeavouring to do for people is to create a new normal. I was listening to an interview with a couple who I've found their videos very helpful and their books really helpful. And so I was really interested to hear this point of view, which was that as we ask for what we would like in our lives, we actually start doing this when we're very young. And between the ages of, I don't know, about 2 and 4 was what this man was postulating. I suspect it's earlier than that in lots of cases. Well, I would, because I'm a rebirther, wouldn't I? That we set out to make our lives, to change our lives in the way that will make us satisfied. So the problem that we perceive when we're very small, we endeavour to change that as we grow up. And sometimes, he said, we actually play out the things that we're afraid of as we grow up, which is true as well, I know. But what I was intrigued by was what I might have asked for when I was 2. And I know a little bit about it. You know, my parents have been quite open about talking to me about my early childhood. So it's quite interesting to see what conclusion I drew and what aim I wanted to have in my life because of that. So I find that really interesting. And of course, our birth is a fundamental part of that. Now, I'm not going to talk so much about birth in this broadcast, because it's something that I usually go into in depth in my webinars. But today I chose to tell you about something else. So I'm going to go on to talk about how you can work with me if you would like to. So apart from this new project which I have, which is not, it's just growing at the moment, you can of course work with me one-to-one, and I do that online. I'm really happy to be able to offer to do that now, because it means I can work with you wherever you are in the world, which is fantastic, isn't it? This technology is extraordinary, and I've discovered it's perfectly possible to create a safe space where you are, even through video, which I think is fab. I do explain to you what you need to do to provide the environment that would make it good to work in, because that needs to be comfortable, needs to be private, and that's something that I will talk to you about if you wish to work with me. But what would be really nice, if you would like to do it, is to have a talk, to have a direction call with you, where we can talk about how breathwork might help you and what you'd like to use it for and whether that's appropriate. So if you'd like to, please do go to my website, which is catherineholland.co.uk, and there is an orange button there to push to be able to book a session with me. It will take you to my online calendar as well, so that you can actually book a time. And that would be lovely. I love doing that. I love working with people. It's That's why I do what I do. So yeah, that's how you can work with me. And that call is a complimentary call, by the way. So I think I'm going to wrap up today. It's been a new topic for me to talk about, which I've really enjoyed. I hope you were interested in hearing how I got into breathwork. It's been a very interesting journey, and it can be an interesting journey for you too. And to hear about some of the types of people that I've worked with, and how fulfilling that is, both for them and for me. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.